stood up, and he had turned sideways, and he had reached up with his arm and moved a branch out of his face. And I realized that this guy was the most muscly person I have ever seen in my life.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you all for joining us, and special thank you goes out to all of you who continue to support the podcast and continue to spread the word. Always remember, if any of you out there have experiences of your own that you'd like to share, feel free to email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and you too could be a guest on the show. All right, everybody, we got an amazing show lined up for you, but before I go any further, let me just apologize for my voice. I managed to catch some kind of bug, and it's hitting me in the chest, so this is the best version of me right now, but I was excited to get this show out to you guys because our guest today is just a phenomenal person. We're welcoming Angelique Benham to the show, who is a Bigfoot researcher as well as an experiencer, and she's here to talk about all of her experiences, so I hope you guys are ready. This is going to get good. Welcome to the show, Angelique. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you and your team, the Sasquatch Sisters Northwest, came on to the YouTube show, and we had a lot of fun talking to you guys all. But, you know, since the podcasts are roughly 45 minutes to an hour, I thought, well, you know, we'll talk to you individually. I know Cindy's been on the podcast before, but I guess I gotta ask, where did Bigfoot begin for you?
Oh, for me, it started, I think it was right around the year 2002.
Okay.
It was, give or take, it's been over 20 years, so I can't say for sure exactly what year it was, but it happened not too long after my brother had passed away. Oh. And one of the first things that I did was wanted to help his kids and my kids be able to deal with the grief. And so we spent as much time as we could with a passel full of boys, because he had 3 sons and I have 3 sons. Oh. So I bought a bunch of kayaks, and my sister-in-law bought a bunch of kayaks, and we decided to just go on a huge excursion and take the boys to Sullivan Lake, which is out on the Selkirk Range out the northeastern corner of Washington State. Mm-hmm. And it's way up in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's beautiful country up there.
Oh, it is. It's God's country. And so we put in at one end of the lake, which is an area that's Noisy Creek, where Noisy Creek feeds into Sullivan Lake. And there's a campground there. And on one side of the lake is wilderness. And on the other, there's a highway that heads further down and does a loop and goes around over to Medellin, I think. But we wanted to take the wilderness side, because the wilderness side is a big mountainous range right up against the lake. And nobody lives up there. And that's where they used to feed the Rocky Mountain sheep during the wintertime. Now, they don't do that program anymore, but there's still Rocky Mountain sheep up there. Mm. And, you know, for us, it's just a cool thing to go and see. So we put in and we kayaked against that side of the lake, and we went the full length of Sullivan, which turned out to be a whole lot longer of a lake than what we figured it would be. And it took us half the day to get from one end to the other. Wow. When we got to the far end, there is a campground on that end. And it used to be, back then, it wasn't that big of a campground. It was still fairly less populated. I think they had some outhouses, but it's not like it is today.
Okay.
Today they've got it paved, and there's, I think, a shower room, and who knows what all they've got, but it's set up now that you have to pay to get in there and stuff. But back then you didn't.
Okay.
Well, by the time we got there onto the shore, to let the kids all get out and rest and stretch their legs and eat lunch, it was already midday. And we knew we couldn't stay there for very long, but we wanted to let them rest. And as soon as we got there, my sister-in-law and I both started feeling like there was something wrong. There was just a weird heaviness in the air that kind of made us both start kind of laughing. Actually, we were joking about it and going, maybe there's a serial killer in the woods and Jason, and we were making jokes and stuff.
Wow.
But at the same time, we were also taking it serious enough that we told the kids that nobody goes to the outhouse unless they have a buddy with them. Nobody goes off by themselves. You stay together. And we really didn't stay for very long. We were only there just literally long enough for the kids to eat, do a little bit of swimming, I'd say maybe a half hour, 45 minutes at most. Mm-hmm. And then we knew we had to get back because it was going to be a long trek to get back. We wanted to be on the far end by dusk. And it was August at that time.
Okay.
And so piled the kids all in their boats and everything and sent them off down the lake. And I stayed behind a little bit. I actually stayed behind quite a while after everybody left. And do you want me to say why?
It's entirely up to you.
Okay. At that point in my life, I was sneaking cigarettes. And my kids were teenagers and early teens, and they I didn't want them to know that I smoked cigarettes. And so I sent them off down the lake and I snuck me a smoke. And of course I waited till they were far enough down the lake that they couldn't see what I was doing. So, terrible me, but, which by the way, I don't smoke anymore.
Oh, so, congratulations. Good job.
But back then I did. And, so here I am, I got a cigarette lit, and I realized that everybody on the beach had left. Like all of the other families on the full length of the shore had left. And so I'm sitting in my boat looking around thinking, I'm the only person here. And I started getting that heavy pressure again, that feeling of just the hair on your arm standing up, and I started feeling like I was being watched again, real heavy. Mm-hmm. And I got in my boat and I shoved off, and I just coasted enough that I was far enough in the water that I figured that if there was somebody that I had to worry about on the beach, that, well, I could get away with them. I could get away fast.
Sure.
But at the same time, holding on to my cigarette so I didn't get it wet, Uh-huh. So I'm sitting in my boat, and I happened to catch a movement out of the corner of my eye, and I looked over across the inlet, and there was a bank, and on the top of it was a rope swing. Now, I knew there was a rope swing because my kids had mentioned it while we were on the beach, and they were trying to decide if they wanted to go over and play on this rope swing or not, but we made them stay with us because it was just too far away. So over where the rope swing was, I noticed that there were these two little boys that were probably about, I'd say 8 or 9 years old. It's what they look like to me. And they walked down the bank, and behind them looked like there was a man, and I looked at him and thought to myself, well, that's must be their grandpa, because he had silver hair, and he was walking down the bank behind them, watching the little boys, and they went over to the water's edge, and I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, good, I'm not by myself now. Mm-hmm. So if something happens to me, because I'm not a good swimmer, and I did give my life vest to one of the kids, that, well, there's somebody else there. It's not just me. So I kind of had this sense of security. And so I sat there, and I'm still smoking my cigarette. And then I decided that I was going to go ahead and just mosey at a snail's pace, but just barely cruise in the direction of heading out. Okay. Well, because I can't swim very well, I chose to try to cut as close as I could to the shore. I wanted to get as close as I could, so if I rolled my boat, then I'd only have a little ways to try to drag it over and get it bailed out of water and get back in it. So I headed in the direction of this grandpa and the two little boys. And as I got closer, I'm watching them, and I'm just taking my time. The two little boys are just doing little boy stuff, skipping stones and pointing and throwing stuff. And the grandpa had sat behind him, and he sat down on, I think it was a stump, and he crossed his leg over his other leg, and he put his hands in front of his knee, and he's just sitting there watching the two little boys. And, I'm watching them at the same time because I'm aimed right towards them. And then I saw him kind of turn, and he looks over at me. And then I noticed he's watching me, and I kind of almost instantly got this relief, like, oh, good, he sees me. So if I roll my boat, I'm not completely alone, Yeah. And so I'm aiming towards him, and I'm just barely cruising. And I started kind of thinking, going, man, he must be pretty old, because he's got silver hair, and he's wearing a turtleneck, what looked like a turtleneck, and long sleeves and long pants, and it's 90 degrees. And all I could think of was he must have bad circulation or something. And he's probably just elderly, Sure. And so I get I don't even know how close I was at that point, but I was close enough that I knew that he was looking at me. And the two little boys had left. They had gone on down the trail or whatever, but they disappeared, and he was still sitting there. And I knew then that he was looking at me, because I was watching him just stare at me. Mm-hmm. So I waved at him, and he didn't wave back. And I thought, okay, well, maybe he just didn't see me. So I put another oar in the water, and I'm just barely cruising, and I'm getting closer, and he's still looking at me, and I'm thinking, okay, now I know he's going to see me now. I know he sees me. Mm-hmm. So I waved at him again, and he still didn't wave back. At that point in time, I'm thinking, okay, he just doesn't want to be friendly. So, all right, that has more power to you, just, okay, whatever. Mm-hmm. So, as I get a little bit closer, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be passing right in front of this guy, and I'm going to be coming real close to him. So I better say hi or something, because even though he doesn't want to wave at me, I'm going to have to acknowledge him, because I'm going to be that close to him. And I get up to the point where I'm literally like coming on probably I'd say maybe 10, 15 feet from him. And I look over at him, and I'm smiling, because I'm thinking I'm getting ready to say hi, or I did say hi. One of the others, I can't remember if I did actually say it or not, but I did. I was thinking I was going to, but either way, I'm smiling, and I look over at him, and as soon as I looked at him, I remember I kind of was shocked because I realized then he wasn't an old man. He really wasn't that old. He was maybe in his early 40s. He had salt and pepper hair, and he had a very thick beard, and it had a little bit of salt and pepper in it, but he wasn't the silver that I thought he was from the other shore. Mm-hmm. And I looked at him, and that kind of shocked me, but he was also a very good looking man. I mean, I'm not lying here. This guy was really good looking. He had a very strong, square jaw, and he had a kind of a narrow nose, and he looked native. And I remember thinking, wow, he's got a really thick beard for being native, but I've also dated guys who were full-blood native that had beards better than anybody I know,
Oh, okay.
So that really doesn't mean much, but he definitely was a good-looking man. And I remember I kind of took a double take, and then I looked away, because then I kind of got embarrassed. And then I looked back at him, and when I looked back at him, I didn't make eye contact with him. I actually was looking more like in this area, and he shifted or something. I want to say he shifted his arms or something, but I realized then that he wasn't wearing a turtleneck. He was actually covered from head to foot in a real thick hair.
Wow.
And I immediately had to look away, because it was like, I didn't want to embarrass him, because it was one of those things where it was like an instant, oh my gosh, he's got a skin disease or something, and I'm staring at him like a rude person. And, so I'm looking away, and then I remember thinking, oh my gosh, he's naked. He's naked. And then it was like, oh, going, okay, I'm just going to act like no big deal. And I remember it was almost like, when somebody trips and they fall and you're trying to act like, oh, I see that. No.
Yeah.
What are you doing down there? You try to pretend like you didn't see it, because you don't want them to be embarrassed.
Right.
That's what I felt like. It was like, oh, I'm just going to pass this off like I see hairy, naked people all the time.
Oh, no.
So I remember I just kind of looked away, and then it was like something didn't click right with me, and I looked over my shoulder at him, and he had stood up at that point in time. Mm-hmm. And he had turned sideways. I didn't see any man parts or anything.
Okay.
I wasn't looking. But he had turned sideways, and he had reached up with his arm and moved a branch out of his face. And I realized then this guy he was the most muscly person I have ever seen in my life. That when you watch like maybe the Mr. Olympus or whatever, sure. Those, yeah. Mm-hmm. But not to the point where it looked freakish.
Okay.
He was perfectly, proportionately muscly, not like anything that I would have expected ever in a million years. He was just like, I guess, a perfectly proportionate person, and about 8 feet tall.
Oh my God.
Now my dad was 6'6", and that's what I remember thinking was this guy had 2 feet on my dad, at least. He had 2 feet on my dad.
Wow. And
his shoulders were probably at least, I'd say 4 feet across, at least. I remember he moved his foot up, and when he moved his foot up, those thigh muscles like runners get, joggers get on their side of their thighs, it rippled, and I went, okay, that is not a costume. Wow. That's not a costume. I could literally see muscles ripple and move under his hair. When I looked back the last time, he was gone. And I just kind of went, okay, what was that all about? We dropped down a road, and there was a meadow. Standing right in the middle of that meadow was a Sasquatch. I can only describe it as being that it was natural. I wasn't afraid. I didn't see anything about it that made me think of a Sasquatch at all. There was nothing about him that made me think Sasquatch. I thought a very big man with a skin disease.
Sure.
And so when I caught up with my sister-in-law, she was kind of waiting for me. And when I caught up with her, her boat was sideways, so I came up on her like this. And I remember coming up on her and her sitting there smiling, going, look, there's a hunter up there on the top of the hill. And I remember looking up the mountain, and the bald spot on the top of the mountain, there he was. And he was literally paralleling me as I was kayaking. He was so big that I could literally see him up at the top of the mountain, walk and look down, walk, look down. And I'm down at the bottom kayaking, looking up, and he's staying with me.
Wow. And
my sister-in-law was going, man, boy, he's really covering a lot of ground up there. And then she's going, I wonder what he's doing in August hunting, because we're thinking, well, it hasn't really gotten the elk season yet or anything. And
sure.
Really up there, I don't even think anybody's allowed to hunt because of it being the Rocky Mountain sheep area. So it was just one of those things that you just kind of go, I don't know what, but okay, whatever. But he stayed with me the rest of the day, all the way until the bald knob on the top of the mountain kind of broke down to the other side and got into the trees again. He went right into the trees, but he stayed right with me. And all the way up until we got back to Noisy Creek, where we got the boats out to put them back in the truck. And my sister-in-law was back saying, I still feel like something's watching us. And I'm going like, yeah, me too. So it was one of those things where I never even tied it together with being Sasquatch at all. And when I got home, I was computers had just started, internet had just become a big thing. I was in college and I'd gotten my first home computer, and research was just still at a bare minimum.
Sure.
I don't even think we had Google yet. I think it was Yahoo. So it's been a while.
Sure.
But I decided to get online, and I was looking online to see if I could find what that skin disease was, because that's what sparked my curiosity was the skin disease. And I kept thinking of the wolf boy from Barnum and Bailey and those old bearded ladies and stuff like that. And so I found this one website where you could type in whatever it was that you saw, if it was an anomaly, and there was a chat room forum, and there was a bunch of people in this chat room that would read your story, and if they found that there was something about it that they could help you with, they would give you the answer. So I wrote it in, and nobody could figure out what it was I was talking about, and I just gave up. I closed down the computer, and I didn't think anything of it. Well, it wasn't very long afterwards, and I can't remember exactly how long it was. I just remember it was very soon after that. I got a phone call, and the phone call came in. That was back when we had those little caller ID boxes where it attached to your landline. It could tell you who was calling you, and it just said U.S. government. Well, I have a brother who's he worked for the CIA back then. And so when I saw U.S. government, my first thought was something happened to my brother. So I picked up, and I do not remember his name. I don't remember the department that he worked for. I just remember that this guy said that he wanted to talk to me about the Sasquatch that I saw at Sullivan Lake. And I was like, I didn't see a Sasquatch. What? What are it was like, what are you talking about? No, I didn't see a Sasquatch. And, the guy's response was like, he was, kind of almost acting like, come on, you're not fooling me, Yeah. And he said, I want to talk to you about the Sasquatch that you saw at Sullivan Lake. And I don't know why, but for some reason I got just a gut feeling instantly, that I don't talk to this guy. Do not talk to this guy, and hang up. And I did. I hung up. He tried calling back, and I saw the caller ID, and I didn't pick up. To this day, I do not know who he was. Maybe he was just a totally legitimate guy, Yeah. I don't know what it was he wanted to talk to me about. I don't know who he was. Maybe he was just a nice guy, but for some reason I thought, don't talk to him. Well, after that, I told my son, my oldest son at that time, he was about 14, 15 in high school. And he told me, he said, Mom, there's this new group that the guys at school are talking about called the Bigfoot Field Research Organization. Maybe you should get a hold of these guys and tell them your story and see if they can help you out. And so I did. I got on there, and I had to fill out I guess it was like kind of like a template almost, and I filled it out, and almost immediately got a phone call from the field researcher who interviewed me, and he interviewed me for probably 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
Having me tell the story over and over and over again. And I remember asking him, I'm like, why do you want me to, why are you having me do this? Well, he was trying to vet my story and decide whether or not I was going to change it or do something to it. And after a while, he told me, he said, no, he goes, you saw a Sasquatch. Well, I was like, how could that be? Because I had only heard of Sasquatch ever looking like the old Patterson-Gimlin film.
Sure.
Of the one from 1967. So I was expecting, if I was to ever have an encounter, it would be like that. Not like the one that I saw, who looked absolutely 100% human. And he said, well, they're people. They're just like us. Some people look like this and some people look like that. And you can't expect them all to look the same. They're not going to. And as it turned out, that gentleman was Mel Gahan, and Mel Gahan happens to be a very good friend of mine, and he's the one that I go to now anytime I have any questions or another encounter, and we kind of bounce things off each other all the time through text messages and stuff, and he's helped me tremendously. But it was not long after that I started having other encounters, and just like some of them looked like the Patterson Gimlin films. Some of them looked like something that your worst nightmares, and then others looked more like human. You know, they really, really, really vary, and none of them happened when I expected it. Not one. I have never gone out looking for a Sasquatch and found one. I always have it happen when I'm, thinking about what I'm going to make for supper, or, trying to decide what I'm going to do for, grocery shopping or whatever. But I've never gone out looking and had it happen. But I've had many happen when I didn't expect it.
Do you think that maybe, and this comes up a lot in the paranormal, that when somebody has one paranormal encounter, they seem way more likely to have more? And do you think that, I don't know, is it a transformative experience maybe, and suddenly it opens you up to the presence of these things that maybe other people just ignore or don't see? Or do you think it's something else?
I think that once you realize that they are real, and they're not just a legend or something that doesn't exist, once you know that they're real, you are more open to it, but it also makes you less willing to deny what you see. I'm going to give you an example. So one time I was with, I used to be with a group of guys who were, we called each other the 12-mile group, because we were a group of trackers and professional guides and hunters. And we spent a lot of time together hunting and tracking and doing a lot of wilderness survival and stuff. Well, one of the guys I was dating, and he was the top dog. This guy had traveled the world as a professional tracker. He was amazing, and he was teaching me everything that he knew. Well, we were up on the top of the Salmo range, and we had spent the entire day completely away from other human beings. And all of a sudden we dropped down a road, and there was a meadow. Standing right in the middle of that meadow was a Sasquatch. And he was an avid disbeliever in Sasquatch. Avid. He looked right at the Sasquatch and he went, "Wow, that's a really big dude." And then he goes, "What's a bird watcher doing up here in the middle of the summer? And why is he wearing Carhartt?" And he just kept chewing on it. And I'm sitting there. I had already had 2 or 3 encounters by that time, so I was just going, I don't know. I wasn't gonna argue with him because he was definitely against it. So all I was just doing was just going, I don't know. And he sat there for probably a good half hour out loud, just chewing on it, going, "Why would you be wearing Carhartts in 80-degree weather? It's really hot. Why did he drop down?" Because what the Sasquatch had done is, as we dropped over had come around the corner and dropped down where we saw him, he was standing, and then he did like the elevator thing where he just kind of hunkered straight down into the grass, and he was able to, I don't know how he did it, but somehow he flattened down into that buckbrush and disappeared.
Wow.
And it just blew my boyfriend away. He was going, why did he do that? Why didn't he just stand there? Man, he was a big dude. Why is he wearing Carhartts? He did that, but he had spent his life just completely telling himself that they didn't exist. And so when he was looking right at one, he had every reason that he could possibly think of to prove to himself that what he saw was not what he actually saw.
Wow. Yeah, people defend their paradigms really fiercely. And that's a huge thing, because I guess there's a security in it, when you know what the world is, you know what it has, and then, to acknowledge something new is really a threat to the whole foundation, I suppose.
So it takes the carpet right out from underneath you. Mm-hmm. I really honestly never thought I would ever, ever, ever see one. And when I did, I thought, well, that would be the only one I would ever have in my entire life. Wow, that was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. No. Then I had the second one. And then, and then you start going, am I going crazy?
Right.
But when you start having people that are with you who are also having the same experiences right alongside you that are saying, whoa, did you just see that? And you're going, yeah, I did just see that. And then you're like, okay, I'm not crazy. Right. Oh, good. Okay. Phew.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's just, I think that when you've been taught not to believe, it's almost like a religion. You almost feel like you're betraying your parents, or you're betraying the people that told you not to believe if you do step back and go, wait a second.
Yeah.
She told me what she wanted me to tell our people is that they are people too, and to respect them because they are people and not animals.
Yeah, I mean, the stories are as many as the stars about all the hunters that are like, I'm out there all the time. There's no such thing as Sasquatch because I'm in the woods all the time. I've never seen nothing. And then you get the hunter that suddenly does, and they can't deny it. And it's like, I'd been hunting my whole life, never saw something. But then, and the story starts there. But, it almost seems like, I don't know, and I don't know how to quantify this at all, but it almost seems like somehow they know when you've seen one, and then it almost seems like then they go, well, she's already seen one, so I could just, I don't have to worry about it, and that they don't mind showing themselves again to a person, because there's so many people just like you that had one experience, and then they've had more, and you're right. If you see one in a lifetime, that's an incredible thing. And I guess for a first meeting, that's really incredible. You were able to get so close because for whatever reason, it was, just like, yeah, I'm going to let her see me, and it's amazing to me that sometimes they're like that and other times they are absolutely the wind. Like they just don't even let you get close. You might hear something crunching bipedally in the woods, but that's about the best you're going to hope for. But here you are kayaking and you're like 15 feet away. It's just sitting there, watching you. And I think that's amazing.
I actually got closer than 15 feet. I got about probably 8 feet away from him. I was close enough to him I could see his eye color.
And so, what was that?
It was kind of a really light, it was actually a beautiful color. It was a very light brown, and he had gold flecks with really black, almost like a outline around his, I guess, the iris. Very, very, is it the iris? Iris is the very center, right?
The
and then there's the
pupil's the very center. Yep.
The iris is the color, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it had like a black outline around the iris, so it made it just the color just pop. And he had really, really thick black eyelashes. And I've actually, I've got a friend of mine who offered to do a police sketch, and he's been having me go through the internet trying to find eye colors and things to piece together to send to him. And I still have not found, even in the fake colors, you know, when you see the fake color
contacts and stuff
for Halloween and stuff like that, I still haven't found any that look similar to what, I mean, sort of, but not like what it was. It was absolutely beautiful. And I've never met anybody that had that same color before, so it really stuck out to me. It definitely caught my eye.
And you said he was very handsome, and that's neat too, because I've heard of those accounts. I mean, you hear such a variety of them. Like, some of them seem to look so much more like chimpanzee-ish, and then others appear like Patty, which looks like, I don't know, something out of the you know, the hominid record. And then there's the others that say it looks like a man, and you hear that so often, and it surprises me. It makes me wonder, is there that much biodiversity, or are these distinct tribes or lineages to each other, or from each other, or what is it? And I don't pretend to know, but it seems the ones that look like people are generally very, very calm. At least that's the takeaway that I've got. I've never heard someone said it looked like a man and then it charged me, or you know, was throwing heavy logs at me. It's, you know, it seems like, I don't know, those, if people see them close enough to really tell, but there does seem to be a lot of distinct variations between, you know, at least categorically, and I suppose that's what gave birth to the, you know, when Wes kind of came up with the whole, there's type 1, type 2, type 3, you know, that whole thing. And there does seem to be some logic to that.
Yeah.
But
I think, quite frankly, because I've spent a lot of time with the elders over on the reservation. You know, I grew up on the reservation, so most of my family, it belongs to the Colville tribe over in eastern Washington, the Arrow Lakes Band. And you know, talking to the elders, and then just getting to know a lot of them throughout the different tribes that I've come, you know, that I'm either related to or come to know. These are forest people. They're ancient tribe. They're an ancient nation of people. And for thousands of years, they have been trading with our people. And after I moved over to this side of the Panhandle, I moved onto a property of 77 acres of lakefront on a private lake where it was just me.
Oh, nice.
And absolutely with Forest Service all around. So I was in seventh heaven, totally, completely secluded. And I had everything from wolves to moose to grizzlies. I had everything on my property. But what I didn't realize when I moved onto this property, that I also had the forest people there too. And it got to the point where I started realizing that this wasn't just a family, this was a clan. And one of the other girls from the Sasquatch Sisters was Cindy Goodbrake. She lives on the opposite side of the mountain that I used to live on that property. And we got to talking and sharing, you know, information with each other, and started realizing that we were dealing with the same clan. Now, as it turned out, she ran into somebody just by happenstance this spring. She was talking with somebody who was native, who told her that the native tribe from our area over here actually knows that clan and has traded with that clan for hundreds of years. And so that clan recognizes and is more open to communicating and gifting us because they're used to it. This is a clan that you can communicate with. This is a clan that I started and set out to do myself, was to actually try to communicate with them and to learn about them in a way that would not be that would cause them to be afraid. So many times I hear people, talking about going out and shooting one, or, they're trying to trick them. They're trying to do these things to get them to rip off hair or do something to give them DNA samples. Well, we're not there to take any samples or to hurt anybody or to get any proof. What we're trying to do is learn how to communicate, because as soon as we set that part aside and said, okay, we're as a team, we're collectively making the definite, I've got a hair in my eye. We're making the definite, decision that we're not going to take DNA samples. We're not going to do anything like that. We're going to actually just leave that part behind and go towards something different. And that's going to be communicating and learning about them as a people. And as soon as we did that, they started communicating with us. They started leaving gifts. They started talking, literally talking to us.
Now, when you say talking, is there a shared language, or what does that mean?
I've only heard what I guess you would call what they call the samurai chatter.
Okay.
I can't understand it.
Okay.
But they understand me. I can go to them and say something to them and they understand. But they'll say something to me and I'm like, I got nothing. Sorry. I can't understand you. Sure. So, they understand us. We don't understand them. And that's frustrating. It's so frustrating because I would love to be able to understand them. And I'm not able to do it. But that's one of the things that I'm working on, is to try to, communicate through glyphs and sticks. And I've had amazing success with that, where I have set down sticks and put a design on the ground, and then I would point to it and then point to myself. Well, I couldn't think of anything to do that would be, that would make sense to me, rather than to put an A on the ground, because my name's Angelique. So I'd put a big A on the ground with 3 sticks. And when I knew that they were there, because the twigs were snapping, I was hearing rustling, I could hear them whisper back and forth, because they would whisper to each other in the, like the samurai chatter.
Okay.
Then what I would do is I would point to the sticks, then I would point to myself. Point to the sticks, point to myself. Then I would gather another group of sticks and I would set them down on the ground and I would point to them. And then I would point to that group of sticks. Then I'd leave. I'd go down, take a garbage sack, go down to the beach, and I'd pick up whatever I could find on the lake that would have, maybe old cigarette butts or whatever, and I'd clean it up. And then I would come back, and every time I did, the sticks that I had pointed to them had been rearranged, and it had been rearranged in a way that it was like very sophisticated way of weaving them to a point that I don't even think I could do it. It would take a while. I would have to really work at it. And this was done in less than probably 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. I started going and I would go back and visit them basically, and I would talk to them like they were people, and I would tell them hi. You know, when I say like they're people, I don't want you to take it that I don't think that they're people. I mean, I talk to them just like you.
Okay.
Only what I do is I just keep it simple. You know, hi, it's me. I'm not here. I'm here to clean up the garbage. Just want to let you know what I'm doing. I give them my intent, and then I pick up the garbage, maybe rearrange the sticks or whatever, point to them, point to me, whatever. This is me. And then I'd go do whatever it was I was going to do. Well, one day I went up to the lake and my son was fishing, and he was the only one that was there. He was out in his kayak, and I came up to the lake and I realized he was there. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do anything this time. I'm just going to hang out because, I'm just going to hang out with my son. They're probably not going to do anything because, my son's there. So I hung out with him and helped him load up his boat. And then he's like, okay, well, I'm out of here. Love you, Mom. And he goes to take off. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to follow you out. And I went over to my Jeep and I went to crawl in, and right in front of my door was a big A.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't 3 sticks. It was 2 sticks. It was 1 stick that had a Y at the end with 1 stick over.
Oh.
So they knew what the A was, even though there weren't 3 sticks.
Sure.
They still knew how to make an A, and it was huge. Yeah, I had to step over it to get into my Jeep, and I was like, and so I squealed at my son. I'm like, he's like, what? He jumps out of the truck, and I'm like, look, and he looks at it, he's like, Mom.
That's cool.
I'm a witness. I saw it, so I'm a witness. It wasn't there when you parked.
Oh, neat. Now, have you ever experienced things like mind speak?
I have only experienced that once.
Okay.
Just once. I don't know if I'm closed off to it. Maybe I'm a knucklehead or something. I don't know, but
sure.
The only time that I've experienced it was right before we were getting ready to go to speak at a conference in Yakima, Washington. Mm-hmm. And it was I'm sorry, I've got something in my eye.
Oh, it's fine.
It was I got ready to go up there on the stage, and I had asked that there's an elder woman. She's a grandmother, Sasquatch. And she's very old. I have no idea how old she is, but she's the one that communicates with me the most. She's the one that will say something to me. And I just figured I would try it because the other girls in the team, they do experience the mind speak. So for them, they understand it and they can do it easily, but I can't. So I just thought I would try it. So I kind of got ready to go, and I was kind of talking to the grandmother, and then I figured what I would do is I would just try to do it without doing it vocally. I would just try to do it, put it out there in my head, almost like a prayer. Mm-hmm. And I got a response because what I asked was, what do you want me to tell the people when I go up on stage? What do you want me to tell the people about you? And I got a And it's weird. I don't know how to really describe it, but it was an audible 2-syllable, like a grunt, but it had, it was like I knew the meaning of what it was. And I don't even know how to explain that. It was like I instantly knew what she was conveying to me, even though if I were to try to tell you what she said, it would only come out a 2-syllable grunt, like right. It was just something like that. It was just a 2-syllable grunt, but I knew what it was she wanted me to say. And I went, okay, I will. And that was the closest thing I have ever experienced.
And what was it she told you to say?
She basically told me what she wanted me to tell our people is that they are people too, and to respect them because they are people and not animals. And it was like when I felt that, when she told me that, I felt it like so far into my spirit that it was almost like I felt like this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
so
it's very powerful. And you've had such incredible experiences, and unfortunately we're already almost at an hour, so this has really flown by, but there's so much more to say, and I hope you will come back again so we can continue the discussion, because I have 100 other questions of things that I'd love to ask you or discuss with you. So if you're willing, I'd love to have you back.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, could you take a moment or two and let people know how to stay in touch with what you and your team are doing?
Sure. We have a YouTube channel, and it's Sasquatch Sisters Northwest, where I will read letters from people who have encounters, true encounters, from the Pacific Northwest, from the northeastern corner of Washington, across the panhandle of Idaho, into the northwestern corner of Montana, which is where our team member Deanna lives. And you can also reach us on through Facebook at Sasquatch Sisters Northwest, or through our Gmail account, which is Sasquatch Sisters Northwest at gmail.com.
And the Northwest is just the NW again, right?
No, it's actually spelled out. I don't know why we did it that way, but for some reason we just decided to be difficult. We spelled the whole thing out.
On all of those sites, or just on the email?
On everything.
Okay, good. Okay,
yeah, on
perfect.
Everything. So, but definitely get a hold of us. We would love to hear your encounters, and our goal is to learn, and we hope you are too, because we would love to share with you what the forest people are telling us.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you, Angelique, for coming on, and thank you for sharing your stories with me and with our listeners, because I think they're beautiful. Together, maybe through time and enough efforts, we can come to understand these beings better. But thank you so much for making this possible.
Oh, thank you, and very honored to be on your program. Thank you, Brent, and I appreciate you. I hope you get feeling better.
Me too. Thanks. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on tonight's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please feel free to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, as well as finding us on Twitter. We're on Twitter at Paranormal Portal, Portl, and we'd love to have you stop by our YouTube page and subscribe and check out our shows there. We got hundreds of shows, Journeys into the Paranormal Portal, so I hope you'll check it out, guys. We're over there at youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, so hope to see you guys soon. We'll be back, of course, for more podcasts in the coming days. So we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice, take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can.